multitasking.
Mm.
Is that a good policy or a bad policy? Does it become part of the solution, or does it become part of the problem?
Look, it's definitely part of the problem. The term multitasking is actually a misnomer. It's an illusion. The brain processes information in serial, which means one thing after another, and we are physically incapable of actually processing two complex stimuli at the same time. So when we're driving our car, for instance, and talking on the phone, even if we're on hands-free, our attention's going from the driving to the conversation, back to the driving, backwards and forwards.
What's so fast that it sort of creates an illusion I'm paying attention to two things?
That's right. You might think of one of those animated flick books. It's going backwards and forwards so fast that it seems like we're doing both things at once, but actually we're not. We're always focusing on one thing at a time. And that's why if you're deep in conversation and something jumps out in front of your car, the reaction time's just that little bit slower. Or if you're making a right-hand turn and really concentrating and someone says something really important, you might have to ask them to repeat it.
Yeah. Right. And so what happens with that? Are we more likely to make errors? Are we more likely to feel stressed? Or and is there a difference between multitasking and maybe efficiently switching our attention?
Yeah, we can definitely learn to efficiently switch our attention. What seems to work, what the research shows, is when we focus on one thing at a time, we actually become less stressed and more productive. Of course, when we're trying to multitask, if our attention's on one thing, it's not on the other thing. And so when we're trying to do some work and communicate at the same time, or if we're on our phone, for instance, we're losing time as we switch our attention to something else. And there's a phenomenon called the attentional blink, which is pretty interesting as well. And what that shows is every time we switch our attention from one thing to another, there's a really brief pause. It's quite short, between 0.2 up to half a second, 0.5 a second. The more stressed we are, the longer the attentional blink is. And during this time, we're actually not paying attention to anything at all.
It's like the blank screen as you shift from one computer program to another.
It's exactly that. It's a blank screen. It's dead time. You know, we know this because if we were to flash up shapes on a computer screen and get you to press a button every time you saw a shape, if we put up a shape and then within 0.2 of a second put up another one, you literally wouldn't see it. You know, your attentional system would be blinking offline just while that second shape came up. Then you'd be back and you'd be like, what shape, right? And of course this has implications, because if we're working in a way where we've got multiple tabs open on our computer and the alerts are still turned on our phone, for instance.
Attention's going to that.
Backwards and forwards, it's switching backwards and forwards, and we're losing half a second each time we switch our attention.
And losing the flow of the activity that we're engaged in.
Of course, yeah. Making mistakes, losing track, and of course it stresses us out. Yeah.
What about media? I mean, we've got so much technology these days, which on one level I think can be a pretty good servant and if it's used well, but I think sometimes it must be becoming a little bit of a tyrannical master. What's the issues around modern technology and screen time and attention?
Well, as you've already said, it's about how we use it. Technology is neither good or bad. I mean, if we think of nuclear power, fire, language, it's all about how we use it. And so it does actually help us to be more connected, to be more efficient in some ways, but it also encourages distraction. It encourages this sort of so-called multitasking mentality. So we might be in the middle of doing one thing and then bing, in comes a little sort of invitation in the top right corner of the screen to switch our attention and do something else, and we might start doing that and then bing, there's another invitation again. So technology used improperly can actually contribute to this distractedness, reactivity, as well as we just post things online that without really thinking about it beforehand.
So it sounds like in terms of developing mindfulness, it's going to be more than just practicing some mindfulness meditation exercises and so on. It's going to have a lot to do with how we manage the environment and how we become aware of some of these, perhaps if we could say, enemies of attention, and manage those situations as well.
Definitely. Practicing mindfulness formally through meditation practices, informally through its applications, that's the ground, that's the base, and it's very important. But it's also important that we just start to use technology much more effectively by, for instance, turning off the alerts on our computer, doing one thing at a time, making sure that we practice being attentive and focused rather than distracted. Yeah.